Deep in the outer reaches of the galaxy, where stars flicker like ancient memories and planets drift quietly through the void, the remnants of a once glorious empire lay scattered. Known only as the Ancients, this civilization had long since fallen into mystery. Their sprawling ruins were dotted across countless worlds, relics of a forgotten time. Some believed they were gods, others that they were simply another race destined to fade. Yet, all who came across their ruins were drawn to one thing: the prophecy. This prophecy spoke of a war unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, one that would end the dominance of every galactic power. The prophecy warned of a final foe, a force so powerful that no civilization would survive. For centuries, the great empires of the galaxy had feared the unknown, each one searching for clues, each one hoping the foe would never appear. But in their hearts, they all knew that this was inevitable. On Earth, in the dim-lit corridors of a long-forgotten military complex, an unexpected discovery shattered centuries of silence. A team of human scholars, digging through layers of history and technology buried under the dust of time, uncovered something remarkable: a fragment of an ancient text. This wasn't just any discovery. It was part of the prophecy itself, a long-lost piece of a puzzle. The scholars, working in secret to decode the text, soon realized that it wasn't just any warning. It was a message for humanity. The final line of the prophecy, written in an ancient tongue, spoke of an enemy unlike any the galaxy has seen before, and more chillingly, the one that stands with the stars themselves. The words were cryptic, difficult to interpret, but the meaning was becoming clear. Earth wasn't just going to play a part in this war. Earth was going to be the catalyst. The implications of this discovery were staggering. For decades, Earth had been considered a backwater in the grand scheme of galactic politics. Despite their technological advances and military strength, humans were still viewed as the new kids on the block, far from the towering powers that dominated the galaxy. Yet, this prophecy made one thing painfully obvious: humanity's destiny had just been irrevocably altered. Admiral Celine Lawson, one of Earth's brightest military minds, was called in to make sense of it all. She had always been a pragmatic leader, known for her sharp intellect and no-nonsense approach. But this was different. The more she studied the prophecy, the more she realized how crucial Earth had become. No longer was the question whether humanity could survive the coming storm. It was whether they would be the ones to shape the galaxy's future. But even as Lawson prepared to guide humanity through this unknown, she understood that the true test was yet to come. Earth had become more than a player on the galactic stage. It had become the stage itself. As she pored over every detail of the prophecy, Admiral Lawson couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that something was already moving in the darkness of space. She couldn't prove it yet, but her instincts told her that the galaxy's fear was about to become a reality. Every piece of evidence, every fragment of the prophecy seemed to whisper one truth: the final foe was real, and it was coming. With every passing moment, Lawson realized that Earth had unknowingly become the pivot on which the fate of the galaxy would turn. The final. War was inevitable, and humanity's role in it would decide whether they would rise or fall. The universe had no idea what it was about to face. As Lawson prepared to brief Earth's leadership on the gravity of their situation, she found herself staring out at the stars, wondering how many had already been consumed by the growing darkness. The galaxy had been living in fear for generations, but they were about to face something far worse than they ever imagined: a force that would stop at nothing to consume everything in its path. And somehow, Earth, the planet once considered insignificant, would be the one to challenge it. There was no turning back now. The battle for the galaxy had begun. Across the vast expanse of the galaxy, the stars themselves seemed to tremble with an unnatural energy. A disturbance, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, was spreading like wildfire. The Zorvani, a ruthless insectoid species driven by an unquenchable thirst for conquest, were the first to notice. Their scouts, ever watchful in the dark corners of space, reported strange cosmic events: ancient stars flaring without reason, asteroids shifting from their orbits, and wormholes appearing and vanishing in the blink of an eye. These events were not isolated, but happening on a scale that no one had predicted. And for a species whose survival depended on dominance, it was a sign that the galaxy was no longer stable. Something bigger was at play. Meanwhile, the Valorians, a race of telepathic beings who had long controlled vast sections of the galaxy, through their mental abilities, sensed a growing tension that stirred even their most seasoned minds. They, too, watched the sky with increasing concern. The flares in the stars felt like a warning to them, one that called to their collective consciousness. They weren't the only ones who noticed. The Draxari, an ancient and mighty warrior, race whose advanced technology could wipe out entire fleets in moments, began to mobilize their vast military armada. They had seen wars before, but this was different. This was something much greater than any of the rivalries or conquests they had ever known. It wasn't just the strange cosmic shifts that were drawing the attention of the galaxy's most powerful factions. There was a feeling, an unease that spread like wildfire through every world, from the deepest mining colonies to the towering citadels of the ruling elites. It was as if something ancient, something long buried in the galaxy's past, had begun to stir once again. It wasn't just a war for territory, it was something far more sinister, and no one could explain it, not fully. The galaxy was heading toward a point of no return, a precipice that no one could stop. The time of uneasy peace was over. Admiral Celine Lawson, once known only to the people of Earth, now found herself thrust into a position of leadership across the entire galaxy. She was called to join the highest-level diplomats, scientists, and military leaders from every corner of the galaxy, summoned to an emergency summit. These were not just a few squabbles between empires. This was something that threatened to unravel the very fabric of the universe itself. The convergence, as it was now being called, was a term first recorded in the ancient prophecy, and now, as every faction looked at the evidence unfolding before them, it was clear that the final war was not a distant possibility. It was a very real and present danger. The galaxy's major factions, each with their own agendas, began to take sides. The Zorvani, brutal and calculating, wanted to exploit the chaos, seeing an opportunity to expand their dominion further. The Valorians, always careful and strategic, began to build their mental networks and strengthen their hold over the galactic core, preparing for a war they were certain was coming. The Draxari, known for their ruthless efficiency, sought to secure their territory and prepare for the worst. Amidst this turmoil, humanity stood at the crossroads of destiny. Though still new to the galactic stage, Earth had shown an ability to adapt and innovate in ways that no one had expected. And with their newfound knowledge of the prophecy, the humans were beginning to realize the weight of their role in this unfolding drama. As Admiral Lawson and her council of generals deliberated, the scope of the situation became clearer. The key? Cosmic events were not random. They were the first signs of the galaxy being drawn into the inevitable. The final war was coming, whether anyone was prepared or not. And yet, despite the fears and doubts that gripped even the most experienced of leaders, there was a deep undercurrent of hope. Humanity, for all its flaws, had something none of the other factions had: an innate ability to adapt, to think in new ways, and to unite in the face of overwhelming odds. If they could harness that strength, they might just become the force that tips the scales in favor of life, not death. But the prophecy had been clear. This war would not spare anyone. It would not discriminate based on size, strength, or power. Every race in the galaxy would be affected. The Zorvani, the Valorians, the Draxari, No one was safe. And as each faction moved into position, preparing for the coming conflict, the one question remained: would humanity be ready? The storm was gathering, and soon the galaxy would be forced to face the truth that no one could escape. The final war had begun, and it would not be a war of men, machines, or even fleets. It would be a war for the very future of the stars themselves. As the war fronts of the galaxy solidified, a new and unexpected power began to rise from the chaos. The galaxy had long underestimated humanity, dismissing them as another fledgling species with nothing to offer. Yet, humanity's first superweapon shattered these assumptions. It wasn't built from the technology of the ancient races or the mighty empires that had long dominated the stars. No, this fleet was entirely human, designed with the ingenuity and creativity that had driven humanity's rise on Earth. The ships, sleek and bold, looked unlike anything seen before. They were unconventional, designed with human adaptability and innovation at their core. Their weapon systems were a fascinating blend of ancient human technology, fused with the rapid advancements born of humanity's relentless desire to survive. These ships were versatile, capable of withstanding blows that would have obliterated more advanced vessels. They were not just made for war. They were made to endure, to fight back against the impossible odds. The galaxy could hardly believe its eyes. Admiral Celine Lawson stood at the helm of this newfound power, leading the fleet with a steely resolve. Her calm confidence in the face of overwhelming uncertainty was contagious. Every ship in her fleet was a testament to humanity's potential when pushed to the limit. As she and her forces journeyed deeper into the heart of the galaxy, she knew that Earth's presence was no longer something to be ignored. They were part of something far bigger. Now, humanity had become an undeniable force, and it wasn't just their advanced weapons or the designs of their ships that made them formidable. It was their adaptability, their resilience, and their relentless drive to succeed, no matter the cost. At the same time, something else was stirring in the galaxy, a movement that no one had seen coming. It began as whispers, then turned into actions as uprisings started to emerge on planets once controlled by other species. The awakening, as it was called, spread like wildfire. Human-led resistance groups, often dismissed as insignificant or weak, were now taking the fight directly to their alien overlords. What began as isolated skirmishes turned into full-scale insurrections. The galaxy watched in disbelief as humans. The newcomers to the galactic stage began to challenge powers far older and more established than themselves. One of the most dramatic moments of this revolution came from a small group of human rebels on a remote planet. In a desperate bid to turn the tide of a losing battle, they managed to infiltrate and hijack an alien dreadnought, a powerful warship thought to be indestructible. With their newfound prize, the human rebels struck back, pushing back the larger enemy forces and flipping the balance of power in their favor. News of this victory spread quickly, sending shockwaves through the galaxy. No one had expected humanity to be capable of such audacity, let alone success. The repercussions of this event were immediate and far-reaching. The galaxy, once dismissive of humans as weak, now feared them. Each success, no matter how small, proved that humanity was more than just a passing anomaly. Their ingenuity, their ability to adapt and think outside the box, was unmatched. They weren't just surviving, they were thriving in the face of overwhelming adversity. Slowly, even the most powerful races began to acknowledge that humanity could no longer be ignored. The mighty Zorvani, the telepathic Valorians, and even the ruthless Draxari started to recognize that the humans they had once seen as insignificant were now a force to be reckoned with. But as the tides of battle began to shift, another question began to loom over the galaxy. Would humanity be able to maintain this momentum? Could they keep up with the relentless pace of the war, and more importantly, Would they be able to unite their fractured forces to stand together against the growing storm? While their victories had earned them respect, they had also painted a target on their backs. The final war was coming, and while humanity had proven that they could stand against the galaxy's mightiest powers, the question remained: did they have the strength to face what was still to come? The awakening was just the beginning, and the real test of humanity's will had yet to unfold. The galaxy had already been plunged into chaos, with alliances shifting and breaking like fragile glass, each faction struggling to stay ahead of the growing storm. Humanity had fought hard to carve out its place, but in the midst of the ever-expanding war, a discovery was made, one that would shake the very foundation of everything they had been fighting for. A human excavation team, deep within the ancient ruins of a long-abandoned stronghold, uncovered a relic unlike any other. It was a glowing artifact, emitting an energy signature that no one could identify, as though it was alive with a power all its own. The artifact was carefully activated by the human scientists, and what it revealed was beyond comprehension. It wasn't just an ancient weapon or a long-lost piece of technology. It was something far older and far more terrifying. The relic was a key, one that unlocked the true nature of the final foe, the Void. The Void, as it turned out, was not a race, not a fleet, nor a single enemy that could be defeated in battle. It was something much more insidious, a force so ancient and pervasive that it had existed long before any of the galaxy's civilizations had even emerged. It was an intelligence, a vast collective network that spread across the stars for eons. It had quietly manipulated entire species, guiding them toward war and conflict, only to devour them once they had fulfilled their purpose. Its ultimate goal was not domination or conquest, but annihilation. The Void did not want territory, resources, or control. It wanted only one thing: destruction. Countless civilizations had risen and fallen over the millennia, each having been led to the brink of extinction by the manipulations of the Void. And now, it was turning its attention to humanity. The revelation sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The galaxy had faced many threats, but none like this. No army, no fleet, no weapon could fight back against a force that existed beyond the realm of time, space, and even the mind. The Void had been there all along, a silent force working from the shadows, shaping the fate of the stars in ways no one had ever suspected. It was not a conqueror. It was a destroyer. And now it had set its sights on humanity, the last remaining hope for the galaxy's survival. As the galaxy scrambled to form some kind of defense, Admiral Celine Lawson knew that no technology, no fleet, no advanced weaponry could stop the Void. Humanity's strength would not come from its ships or its firepower. It would come from something far more powerful: their will to survive. Lawson had always believed that humans were different. They were new to the galactic stage, but they had something no other species had: an indomitable drive to overcome the impossible. And now, more than ever, that would be their key to survival: the Eye. Prophecy that had started as an ancient myth, a vague warning from the past, was now unfolding before their very eyes. The final war would not be one of armies or fleets. It would be a war of wills. The Void had consumed countless civilizations, but it had never faced humanity, a species that refused to give in, no matter the odds. Lawson had spent years preparing her fleet for this moment, but now she understood that the true battle was not one of firepower or technology. It was a battle of survival. Humanity, the last to arrive on the galactic scene, was now the keystone to breaking the cycle of destruction that had plagued the universe for millennia. As Admiral Lawson stood before the leaders of the galaxy, she knew that the war they were about to face would be unlike anything they had ever imagined. But she also knew that humanity, for all its flaws, had something the Void could never understand: the ability to fight for something greater than itself. The galaxy's final war was coming, and humanity would be at its center, not just as a participant, but as the key to saving everything. The Void, once thought to be an unstoppable force, would soon face the one thing it had never anticipated: a species that would not be manipulated, that would not fall to despair, and that would not stop fighting. The prophecy had been clear all along. Only humanity could break the endless cycle of annihilation. And now, with the Void on the horizon, humanity had no choice but to rise to the challenge. The galaxy stood on the precipice of oblivion. The Void's shadow stretched across the stars, and every civilization, no matter how powerful or proud, knew that this was the end. The once invincible factions, the Zorvani, the Veilorians, the Draxari, each feared their extinction, but they saw in humanity a force that could finally unite them in their darkest hour. One by one, these ancient powers sent their fleets to join Admiral Celine Lawson's, setting aside old rivalries and suspicions. The galaxy was no longer divided by species or political interests. This was a fight for survival. Humanity had risen to lead them all. As the final confrontation began, the Void unleashed its terrifying power. Entire planets began to destabilize, systems collapsed, and fleets, no matter how vast or advanced, were erased in mere moments. The Void was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Its collective intelligence was everywhere at once, manipulating the fabric of reality, erasing everything in its path. No ship, no weapon, no strategy had seemed capable of stopping it, but humanity, in its boundless adaptability, refused to yield. They were outnumbered and outgunned, yet they fought with a fury and ingenuity that the Void could never understand. They evaded the Void's most deadly weapons, using tactics that no one had ever anticipated, exploiting weaknesses that only a species like humanity could recognize. Amidst the chaos of the final battle, when even the mightiest fleets of the galaxy seemed helpless in the face of the Void's overwhelming force, humanity revealed their trump card. They had developed a weapon, one born of sheer human ingenuity, that could sever the Void's connection to its vast network. It was a device capable of isolating the Void's collective intelligence, cutting it off from its vast influence over the galaxy. With it, humanity had the chance to do what no one had thought possible: defeat the Void from within. Admiral Lawson, leading her fleet with unwavering resolve, commanded the final charge. The weapon was deployed, and as the immense power of the Void began to unravel, the galaxy's last hope turned into a reality. The collective intelligence that had spent eons shaping the galaxy's downfall faltered. The Void's grip on the stars, on time, space, and life itself, began to fade as humanity's unity and strength surged forward. What had seemed like an unstoppable force now found itself struggling against the will of a species that had learned to fight, adapt, and survive no matter the odds. The battle raged on, but the tide had turned. The Void, once an unstoppable force of destruction, was no longer invincible. Humanity had broken its hold, and the galaxy could feel the shift. The final war, the prophecy that had foretold the end of everything, had been won, not by the galaxy's most ancient or powerful species, but by the youngest and most unexpected of them all. Humanity, through its resilience and relentless determination, had stopped the cycle of annihilation. The Void was no more. In the aftermath of the battle, the galaxy was left in ruins, but it was a ruin filled with hope. The united forces of the galaxy began the long process of healing and rebuilding. New alliances were forged, and old ones solidified. The stars, once again, shone with the promise of peace. And as the dust settled, the prophecy of the ancients was fulfilled. The final war had been fought, and humanity had been the force that ended it. No longer the insignificant species that had once been dismissed by the galactic powers, humanity had proven its worth. They had faced the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known and emerged victorious. In the hearts of every race that had fought beside them, the truth was clear. The galaxy would never forget who had stood against the darkness. Humanity had not only survived, it had changed the very fabric of the galaxy. It had become the beacon of hope, the guiding force in a galaxy that had once teetered on the brink of destruction. As the galaxy rebuilt itself, humanity's place at the center of this new era was undisputed. The stars were no longer just a battleground. They were a symbol of resilience, unity, and strength. The void was gone, but humanity's legacy would remain forever. The galaxy now knew its true enemy and its greatest ally, and that ally was humanity.